that the black man has been castrated by whitey and by the black woman. I'll repeat a statistic that I gave you earlier in this program. The black Americans are upwards of 25 million today. 100 years ago, we were around 3 million. Castrated men do not father children. Now, so we accept that as a lie. However, there is some truth in that lie. And the truth is, the African slaves who were brought here came from systems where the matrilineal descent, patrilineal control, was the custom. African women today choose or choose not to carry their husbands' names. If they do, it's usually a Westernism. When the slave owners became aware that there was a maternal kind of control inherent in the slaves, he developed it. Of course, this is a part of an intent to break up a family, the family unit, the structure that is really the backbone of not only the nation, but all mankind. The post-slavery, the Reconstruction period, and that period after that, for some 50, 60 years, the black man was not allowed to even get a job. He worked as a sharecropper, or in the most menial, usually agricultural conditions. The black woman, however, became stronger. She sat down in that role that history had cast her in, and that slavery had caricatured her in. So she began to believe that, yes, it's true, I'm so strong. And he also began to believe, they both bought this lie. Now,
the clip that we just played was by Maya Angelou in 1968. It was a part of a series that she did for PBS. And I just took a small clip, maybe a couple of minutes, where she's actually describing the experience that we have here in the United States, where the white slave owners or the white society took advantage of the maternal control that existed in Africa and still exists today. And they shunted or stunted the patriarchal control that black men and Africans exhibit in the motherland, which differs from the sole owner or the sole proprietorship that Western patriarchies normally have. Since the family structure in Africa was completely different than the family structure in the West, in Western Europe, they could cut off one half and the other half survive. So what they did was they suppressed the black men and took away their control of the family, and then they subjected it with white patriarchy. So if you think about it, the white men just stepped in and substituted the white government for the patriarchal control of the black family, while keeping the strong maternal control of the children in the household. That's the way it still exists today, patriarchal control, because even with you, black man, if you think about it, when a black woman doesn't like anything or doesn't like what you do and she disagrees with what you do, she doesn't appeal to anybody else. She appeals to white daddy. She appeals to the patriarchal control that has dominion over you and your body. Because even when I was young, way before it was a thing for violence against women, if my mother didn't like what my father did, she just picked up a phone, or she went to the phone booth and she called the police. And guess what the police did? The white policeman would do, come and get him and lock him up, which a lot of that didn't exist in the white patriarchy. They were letting black men know that you're not in control of your women, we are, which is something we still see today. And black women let us know that all the time, that we are not in control of them. We have very little influence on them. The influence that they need, that they have, is the white dominant structure, the white dominant patriarchal structure. That's how come when they talk about a black patriarchy, they have to jump through so many hoops to make it exist, because guess what? A black patriarchy in the United States doesn't exist. It is still a white dominant structure that exists, the white dominant patriarchal structure that everybody, including the white woman, bows down to. So if you're ever confused about why we have so little influence and control over our woman, and our woman can do so much to us, even against our protest, that's why. Because the structure of the black family was not structured for you to be in charge of it. It was structured for the white man, the man that imported her into the country to be in charge of her. And she shows it all the time, whether she says so or not, whether she thinks so or not. At the end of the day, she knows that the white man is in charge of what she does. But continuing. Now, this is a quote I got from Dr. Johnson, and this actual quote was pulled from the ISIS papers, page 285. Black women moving towards the 21st century. Critical in the history of white supremacy was the decision not to control black and other women of color, but to control the men of color. Thousands upon thousands of black men in the U.S. were lynched and castrated to drive home the message that white men intended to control the balls in this world, both on and off the court. White males understood that they needed white women as well as black women to help them achieve and maintain this power relationship. White women always have known what they stood to gain, their own survival as whites. Black women have been confused and less clear in fully understanding how they have been led to cooperate in this deadly power game of white supremacy. Further, black women do not understand fully that they have nothing to gain and everything to lose if this deadly game continues. Like I said, that is a quote from Dr. Welsing's book, The ISIS Papers. I think this is ISIS Papers. In other words, that's another testament from one of our elders that knew what the game was back in the 60s, that white supremacy was never there to suppress black women. No matter what they say it, how they put it, the system put in place was never to suppress the black woman. Black women die, get pulled over, get put in jail, a little bit above the rate that white women do. Nowhere near the rate that white men do. So the system is not put in place to control the black woman. If you look at the incarceration rates, less than 1% of black women actually are in jail or prison. The numbers are so low when you consider that there's 22 million adult black women and about 18 million adult black men. There's 4 more million adult black women than there is adult black men. But yet, the incarceration of black men is almost 30%. So that right there tells you that this system is not there to suppress black women. It never was. The categories of life, financial, social, whatever, tell you that the system's put in place were to suppress black men, basically take away the patriarchal control from black men over their families. Black men do not control their families. They never have. And that is both by consent of the white power structure and also by the black women themselves. That's why I said Dr. Welsing says that most black women are confused. Not all, but most are confused about the game that they play because they think that they're fighting white supremacy, but the thing is they're aiding it. The vast majority of black women are aiding it because they're taking advantage of a system they're built to suppress your men. When it was welfare, they knew that the black women were going to kick the black man out of the house. They could have changed it, but they didn't. The man in the house rule was not designed for white men. The man in the house rule was designed to keep black men from getting a leg up by getting welfare from the government. They didn't mind giving it to the children and the black women. They never have. But black men that to get a leg up, they get educated, will actually vie for power. They will find their own patriarchal control. over their families. But that would mean that the white man wouldn't have overall control over both. That's why Tommy calls black men man-nots. You don't have a father right, as Tommy put it. Also the same thing that Chaba Churchward put it when the father's role was known. The father right became the leader of the family, the de facto leader of the family, and the de facto leader of the clan. But white supremacy, or white people, white society, works double time to deny the father right privilege that every other society has. And this just illustrates our point. Continuing. All right, here's another post I got from the Venerable Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. The majority of urban black slave owners were women. In 1820, free black women represented 68% of heads of household. It's in 1820. That's what boggles my mind. In 1820, free black women represented 68% of heads of households and 70% of slaveholding heads of colored households. The large percentage of black women slave owners is explained by the combined effects of manumission, being freed by their white masters for whom they fathered children, inheritance, receiving slaves from their white masters, relatives, and even husbands who had a higher mortality rate than women. Personal industry, once they were freed, buying slaves themselves. Black women were the majority of slaves emancipated by white slave-owning men with whom they had sexual relations. The misogynist nature of South Carolina society is nowhere better revealed than by the fact that 33% of all recorded colonial manumissions were mulatto children and 75% of all adult manumissions were females. If homosexual relations existed between black male slaves and their white masters, these relations were not directly acknowledged through emancipation. By 1830, in Charleston, 65% of black slave owners bought slaves for profit rather than to free family members. As indicated in registered documents, black slave owners often owned family members and slaves that they used in their business, but only 8% of black slave owners who recorded slave transactions were purely benevolent masters, buying the slaves' family members such as their spouses, children, and other relatives. It was, like I said, you can see, the stuff keeps rolling in. Stuff keeps rolling in. They did not treat black women the same way they treated black men. Black men were always a threat. Black men and red men were always a threat, the biggest threat to the white society in the United States. The only reason that the Native American women died out with their men is because they refused to go along with the white power structure, even at the expense of saving their children and saving themselves. They died out. Some of them starved to death because they stood with their men as one whole. The difference with us in the United States, as far as black people, we're not one whole. We never were. We're brought in from all parts of sometimes the world and different parts of the continent, from different tribes, thousands of different tribes. And the vast majority of the people that first came here, the first slaves coming here, were men. And the women didn't come later until what? They needed to reproduce the slaves in-house instead of buying them. They grew the slave children here. And all the children weren't sired by black men. Some were sired by white men. That's how come you had this big jump in manumission for women. Some women, black women, would get manumission or basically freedom by having more than 10 kids. So if they had more than 10 children for the master, he would free her. Now, her children might be sold, but he would free her. But that lets you know that they never try to really suppress black women. Even today, they really don't. Even if you go to an all-woman protest, basically they handle those women with kid gloves. They don't treat them the same way they treat the men. That should be fairly obvious. Like I said, even this particular segment from an author's book lets you know that even back then, the vast majority of households, black households, were what? were headed by black women. I don't have the book. I can't check its facts. So we're going to take it with a grain of salt. But the thing is, it adds up. And notice his number, which I noticed was almost the same as it is today. Has it fluctuated? But it just boggles my mind that in 1820, the single mother headed households were the same as they are now, almost the same as they are now, right around 70%. So this is not a new occurrence. This is not something that happened over time. This has been going on for quite a while. Yet we dance around the point, we play games with it. Those people in the 60s knew exactly, the women in the 60s knew exactly what was going on, exactly what's going on. And I've heard that there's a book that talked about about the Moynihan Report and this blame the victim, because that was the slogan that they used to suppress the truth about the black family structure and black women. Since the black women were in charge of the family and did what the hell they wanted to do, and Moynihan and black men were calling them out for it, they started saying blame the victim. You're blaming the black woman for a system she didn't set up. And everybody agrees she didn't set it up. The thing is, she's perpetuating the same system, this same dysfunctional family system that's been going on for 200 years. That is now festering so bad that the black men said, the hell with it, we're up and out of here, which in a sense is sad. But sometimes I've said this quote before. I don't actually condone giving up on black women, but I do understand. And I asked a brother in a debate the other night, if the vast majority of black women are not fit for consumption or fit to be related to in that way, and black men need to stop complaining and do what's best for them. I said, if what's best for them is going to another group of women, is that what he proposes? But even when it comes out of their mouth, they always say something else. They always try to minimize it. Really, what they want you to do is grin and bear it. They want you to take what you have been given for the last 200 years. But anyway, that's just the point I wanted to share with you about the Gynocracy that stood out to me. That when Maya Angelou actually said that, when she said it, it made so much sense, because she described exactly what's happening today and has been happening over the last couple hundred years. Why we can't relate to our women, why we can't do anything to our women, why our women run socially roughshod over black men, and we can't even get a word in edgewise. They took away your patrilineal control. They took it away from the very inception. You've never had it. Now, I don't care what the guys say about controlling your own family. You might be able to do that on an individual basis here and there, but for the most part, if that woman want to pick up and walk out, there's not a damn thing you can do about it. And there never has been. Anyway, folks, I finally got this up. So, kudos to me after getting this up. This has been, this was actually planned 3 weeks ago, okay? I had it on a drawing board 3 weeks ago, but the thing is, so much stuff has been happening, I hadn't had a chance to get to it. But it's finally here. I hope my patrons actually enjoy it, because this is going to be a patron only. And I'll talk to you guys on the next one.